War reshapes men and deserts reshape legends, and in these forgotten films, the dust of battle never fully settles. These brutal war and Western classics now free on Tubi roar back into the modern world with raw violence, grit, and truth. Each title is a wounded monument buried in time, waiting for you to uncover its story. Number 15. Red River, 1948. Red River stands as one of the most unforgiving journeys ever carved into the mythology of the American frontier. At first glance, it appears to be a simple cattle drive story, yet the land itself becomes a battlefield where men wage silent internal wars that scar the soul. The trail stretches endless and merciless, pushing every rider to the brink. What makes this film brutal is not only the harsh, dust-bitten landscapes, but the emotional violence simmering between its leads. Fathers and sons become enemies, pride becomes a weapon, and survival demands surrender to forces far greater than bullets or fists. The film unfolds like a war chronicle disguised as a Western, showing how ambition hardens into tyranny and how loyalty fractures under the weight of obsession. The cattle stampedes thunder like artillery fire, and the long march echoes the despair of infantry pushing through endless campaigns. Red River captures the exhaustion of command, the bitterness of rebellion, and the human cost of pushing westward when the only reward is more wilderness. Now, free on Tubi, the film returns with renewed force, reminding viewers that some battles are fought without uniforms, and some frontiers are conquered only by losing everything that once felt certain. Number 14. The Big Country, 1958. The Big Country explodes outward like a frontier epic where the land is so vast that men appear small, yet their pride is impossibly large. This film is brutal not in gore, but in the grinding psychological conflict that erupts between families locked in a generations-long feud. The landscape becomes a war zone, even without regiments or muskets. Every ridge and dusty ravine seems soaked in old grudges. The newcomer at the center of the story enters this hostile world expecting civility, and instead finds territorial combat disguised as hospitality. What unfolds is a test of endurance and moral strength, where refusing to fight becomes the most dangerous stance a man can take. The fistfights are bone-rattling, the confrontations unyielding, the silences sharper than bayonets. The Big Country exposes a frontier where violence is tradition and peace is treason. Every character battles something invisible, either their own legacy or the expectations hammered onto them since birth. Though set far from any battlefield, the film mirrors the emotional warfare seen in classic military dramas where alliances shift rapidly and survival depends on knowing when to stand and when to walk away. Now, streaming free on Tubi, it storms back with thunderous force, reminding viewers that the quiet wars fought in lonely countries can be the deadliest of all. Number 13. My Name is Nobody, 1973. My Name is Nobody swings between humor and brutality with a style that feels like a Western daydream poisoned by shifting eras. At first glance, it looks playful, almost whimsical, yet beneath the surface lies a savage farewell to the dying age of gunslingers. The film unfolds as a meditation on the inevitable demise of frontier legends, replaced by a new generation marching toward modernity. This tension births an emotional war where nostalgia becomes a battlefield. The aging gunfighter at the heart of the film fights not for gold or glory but for dignity as his world dissolves around him. The young admirer who follows him represents both salvation and threat, pushing him into confrontations that echo the final battles of great soldiers aging out of relevance. Beneath its comedic veneer, the film carries brutal truth. Heroes do not fade gracefully, they are erased by shifting times. Every duel feels like a funeral, every sunset a surrender. Railroad expansion, guns blurring into mechanized violence, and crowds replacing solitary duels all signal an unstoppable transformation. The film becomes a requiem for the old and a warning for the living. Now, free on Tubi, My Name is Nobody reemerges as a strange, beautiful final salute to warriors who survived too long to die young. Number 12. Hang 'em High, 1968. Hang 'em High opens with a violent injustice so shocking that the entire film becomes a relentless march toward reckoning. A man wrongly accused is hauled to a tree by a self-appointed mob and left to die under the indifferent sky. This moment ignites the tone of the story where law and vengeance clash with savage force. The frontier is painted as a land ruled by fear, where justice is not blind but blindfolded, twisted, and weaponized by the powerful. As the protagonist rises from near death, he becomes a living reminder that some wars are fought alone through grit, stubborn will, and a refusal to vanish quietly. The film mirrors the emotional brutality of war dramas where trauma transforms a soldier into something harder, colder, and unrecognizable. Every outlaw confrontation feels like a battlefield skirmish, and every courtroom scene pulses with political warfare where the truth is sacrificed to convenience. Hang 'em High exposes a frontier where mercy is rare, survival is earned, and justice is forged through relentless pursuit. Now, free on Tubi, the film returns with jagged energy, inviting viewers to witness a world where the rope becomes a symbol of both terror and unfinished business, and where a single survivor can overturn an entire system through unstoppable fury. Number 11. The Shooting, 1966. The Shooting drifts across the frontier like a fever dream wrapped in dust and dread. At its surface, it appears to be a simple pursuit story, yet nothing in this barren wasteland behaves simply. The characters move as if pulled by invisible wires, driven by motives they barely understand. The land itself feels haunted, turning every footstep into an omen. The film strips the Western genre down to raw bone, revealing a brutal psychological war waged not with rifles, but with silence, tension, and suspicion. The hired gun, the enigmatic woman, and the reluctant companions form a fragile alliance ready to shatter at any moment. Every scene vibrates with unease. Every glance feels like the drawing of a weapon. The violence erupts suddenly without warning, echoing the chaos of battlefield ambushes. The journey becomes a descent into the darkest corners of human intent, where revenge, obsession, and fatal destiny collide. The Shooting transforms the frontier into a mental battleground where the enemy hides within the human heart. Now, streaming free on Tubi, this eerie masterpiece invites viewers to confront the unspoken horrors lurking behind stoic faces and endless horizons, revealing a West where survival depends not on aim, but on unraveling the truth before it devours you. Number 10. The Long Riders, 1980. The Long Riders charges through the outlaw myth with a level of authenticity that feels almost documentary in its brutality. This is not a polished legend shaped by nostalgia. This is the raw saga of the James and Younger gangs told through the eyes of real brothers, portraying on screen what real brothers once lived in blood and fire. The film opens with uneasy camaraderie that quickly fractures under the weight of violence, greed, and pride. Every gunfight hits with shocking realism, creating a sensory assault similar to battlefield reportage. Horses scream, men fall, dust chokes the air, and the world erupts into chaos without warning. The raids unfold like military operations, precise, reckless, and doomed from the start as loyalty buckles beneath pressure. The bond of brothers becomes both shield and curse, driving them deeper into conflict with the world and with one another. The Long Riders captures the emotional devastation experienced by units in war where one bad decision can annihilate an entire group. The aftermath scenes carry a haunting quiet, similar to the silence that follows artillery fire, a moment when the living must face the cost of surviving. Now free on Tubi, this film stands as a fierce, unromantic portrayal of outlaw warfare and the brutal legend that refuses to die. Number 9. Stagecoach, 1939. Stagecoach rides across the frontier like a living portrait of danger, where every mile becomes a battlefield and every passenger carries unseen scars. Though crafted in an earlier era, its brutality lies not in gore, but in relentless tension. The open desert becomes enemy territory ruled by fear, dust, and fate. Inside the cramped coach, strangers from clashing worlds collide, forming alliances born from desperation rather than trust. The film unfolds with the pulse of a war convoy moving through hostile land, waiting for an ambush that could erupt at any moment. Every wheel turn feels like a drumbeat of doom. Each character fights a private war against shame, guilt, prejudice, or haunting past mistakes. When violence finally erupts, it arrives with ruthless speed, echoing the chaos of cavalry charges and infantry clashes. Bullets tear through stillness, horses collapse, and survival becomes a brutal test of instinct. What elevates Stagecoach beyond mere adventure is its exploration of humanity under siege. The frontier strips away masks, forcing every passenger to reveal what they truly are when death rides beside them. Now, streaming free on Tubi, Stagecoach reclaims its place as a ferocious early masterpiece, showing that the West was never gentle, and salvation often demanded courage forged in fire. Number 8. A Man Called Horse, 1970. A Man Called Horse plunges viewers into a raw, unforgiving world where survival demands transformation that borders on rebirth. The film opens with violent capture, thrusting its protagonist into a land ruled by ritual strength and unflinching endurance. This is not a gentle cultural drama. It is a war of spirit, body, and identity. The frontier tribes live within a harsh ecosystem where every day tests strength and allegiance. As the outsider struggles to survive, he enters trials that feel as brutal as battlefield hazing, forcing him to confront the fragility of his former self. The infamous Sun Vow ritual stands as one of the most shocking sequences in Western cinema, evoking the agony and transcendence seen in soldiers who endure rites of passage that break bodies but forge warriors. Throughout the film, alliances shift like war treaties, and rivalries burn with the intensity of political conflict. The story becomes a journey toward understanding that respect cannot be inherited, only earned through suffering and sacrifice. Nature becomes a constant aggressor. Freezing nights, violent hunts, and harsh winds all shaping the battlefield of existence. Now, free on Tubi, A Man Called Horse stands tall as a primal exploration of identity, showing that some battles are fought not for land or power, but for belonging, carved in pain. Number 7. The Longest Day, 1962. The Longest Day does not simply depict war, it overwhelms the senses with scale, sacrifice, and relentless momentum. From its opening moments, the film plunges viewers into the chaos of the Normandy invasion, where fear, courage, and confusion collide under roaring skies. This is war stripped of romanticism, presented as a grinding machine that consumes men regardless of rank or nationality. The film follows soldiers from multiple perspectives, creating a mosaic of human endurance stretched to its breaking point. Paratroopers scatter into darkness, infantry storm beaches under withering fire, and commanders gamble lives on fragile intelligence. Every scene pulses with urgency, capturing the sheer terror of stepping forward when survival feels impossible. The brutality lies in its honesty, showing how bravery often emerges from fear rather than confidence. The Longest Day mirrors the emotional toll found in the harshest westerns, where men push forward not for glory, but because retreat no longer exists. Explosions thunder like collapsing mountains, and silence follows with haunting weight. Now, free on Tubi, the film returns as a monumental war chronicle, reminding viewers that history was written not by heroes alone, but by exhausted, terrified individuals who refused to stop moving forward even as the world burned around them. Number 6. The Stranger Wore a Gun, 1953. The Stranger Wore a Gun storms across the screen with the ferocity of a man running from both his past and his conscience. The film opens in the aftermath of wartime espionage, where loyalties shift like desert winds and betrayal stains every handshake. The protagonist, already carrying guilt from his Civil War deeds, tries to rebuild his life, yet violence follows him like a curse. The frontier town he enters becomes a powder keg, fueled by greed, revenge, and paranoia. Every saloon corner hides an enemy. Every dusty street feels primed for an explosive ambush. The film mirrors the grim tone of post-war dramas, where returning soldiers discover that the battlefield has imprinted itself onto their souls, and peace is nothing more than a fading mirage. Gunfights erupt with ruthless suddenness, echoing the rapid brutality of cavalry skirmishes. The Stranger Wore a Gun turns the West into an echo chamber of unresolved trauma, proving that war does not end when treaties are signed. It lingers in the blood-altering destinies and hollowing out men who once believed in honor. Now, free on Tubi, the film rides back into the spotlight, reminding viewers that running from the past is impossible when the past has already loaded the gun. Number 5. Gun the Man Down, 1956. Gun the Man Down unfolds with relentless intensity, beginning with betrayal that ignites the entire narrative, like a spark thrown into dry grass. A wounded outlaw left behind by his partners awakens with vengeance burning hotter than desert sun. The story becomes a tactical campaign resembling a solo soldier reclaiming lost ground by tracking enemies one by one. The West becomes a battlefield of ambushes where shadows hide mercenaries and every canyon becomes a trap. The protagonist trains himself with the discipline of a hardened fighter, sharpening instincts until he moves with the precision of a sniper. What makes this film brutal is its raw emotional core, where trust is shattered, survival is earned, and retribution becomes the only path toward reclaiming identity. The shootouts feel stark and efficient, lacking glamour and bursting with realism akin to battlefield engagements executed out of necessity rather than pride. The film also explores psychological warfare as the outlaw manipulates fear, turning his enemies on each other until paranoia destroys their once solid alliance. Gun the Man Down stands as a sober reminder that in both war and the West, betrayal cuts deeper than bullets. Now, free on Tubi, it returns as a lean, relentless pursuit of justice, shaped by fire patience and cold determination. Number 4. The Last Frontier, 1955. The Last Frontier blends frontier hardship with military conflict, creating a hybrid tale where the Wild West collides with the disciplined machinery of war. The protagonist, a rugged trapper, wanders into army life, where rigid rules clash violently with his instinctive, untamed spirit. This collision becomes the backbone of the film, turning personal growth into a battlefield and authority into an adversary. The frontier fort resembles an isolated outpost under siege where the tension between soldiers and native forces grows thicker than winter smoke. Within its walls, politics, pride, and fear wage constant battle. The commanding officer, blinded by arrogance, treats war like a chess match, sacrificing men to prove superiority. The trapper sees warfare differently, grounding his actions in survival rather than prestige. Their conflict escalates until the entire fort becomes a microcosm of military collapse, showing how leadership failure can doom even the strongest unit. The Last Frontier is brutal, not only in its clashes, but in its emotional truth, revealing how war breaks men not through wounds alone, but through disillusionment. Now free on Tubi, the film charges back with the force of a forgotten epic, reminding viewers that the deadliest wars often begin with pride and end with the ruins of ambition scattered across silent snow. Number 3. Day of Anger, 1967. Day of Anger erupts from the dust as one of the most ruthless examinations of power, corruption, and transformation in Western cinema. The story follows a young outcast mocked, beaten, and ignored by the town he serves. His humiliation mirrors the early stages of soldiers stripped of identity during training, broken down to be reshaped into weapons. When a feared gunslinger arrives, he offers mentorship that feels like salvation, yet carries a poisonous cost. Under this guidance, the young man hardens, learns violence, and discovers how quickly power intoxicates. The town becomes a battleground, not of armies, but of shifting authority, where fear replaces law. As the apprentice grows stronger, his humanity erodes, revealing how easily victims become tyrants. The film unfolds like a moral war story, where survival demands sacrifice, and the price of strength is the loss of innocence. Gunfights explode with sharp, unforgiving realism, echoing executions rather than duels. The final confrontation feels inevitable, tragic, and merciless. Now streaming free on Tubi, Day of Anger stands as a savage cautionary tale, showing that anger once unleashed reshapes destinies, and that the most dangerous war is the one fought inside a man who believes power will finally make him whole. Number 2. Joshua the Black Rider, 1976. Joshua, the Black Rider, gallops into the frontier with righteous fury, carving a tale of vengeance steeped in pain, loss, and unbroken will. The film begins with wartime devastation, where a former soldier returns to find loved ones gone and injustice ruling the land. This loss transforms him into a relentless rider, pursuing wrongdoers across hostile deserts and shattered towns. His mission is personal, yet it echoes the wars he once fought, where enemies hid behind uniforms and violence became the only language of survival. Now he rides alone, guided by instinct, sharpened by battlefield memory. Every confrontation crackles with danger. Gunfights erupt with stark brutality, lacking spectacle and carrying the same grim weight as close-quarters combat. Joshua moves like a shadow, unafraid of death, yet unwilling to let evil spread unchecked. The film examines themes familiar in war cinema: the corrosive effect of trauma, the loneliness of survivors, and the hunger for justice when institutions fail. Landscapes stretch wide and barren, mirroring his internal emptiness, while the soundtrack pulses with tension like a heartbeat edging toward collapse. Joshua. The Black Rider, now free on Tubi, stands tall as a fierce character study showing how war shapes men long after the cannons fall silent, turning them into riders who carry justice on their own shoulders. Number 1. Five Guns West, 1955. Five Guns West fires into motion with a premise that merges Western outlaw fury with the cold logic of military strategy. Set during the American Civil War, the film follows five condemned prisoners offered freedom if they undertake an impossible mission for the Confederacy. This setup transforms the narrative into a war operation disguised as a Western expedition. The men form a volatile unit bound by desperation rather than loyalty. Each carries a past filled with violence, betrayal, and restless ambition, creating internal conflict that mirrors battlefield descent. Their mission pushes them through unforgiving terrain where danger waits behind every canyon wall. The tension escalates as rivalries sharpen and moral boundaries blur. Violence erupts with the sudden brutality of guerrilla warfare. The outlaws fight enemies on all sides and eventually fight one another when greed fractures their fragile alliance. The film examines sacrifice, duty, and the high cost of redemption, themes rooted deeply in war cinema. Five Guns West refuses to glorify violence, instead revealing the despair that drives men to choose death over dishonor. Now, free on Tubi, this bold early Western reemerges as a gritty hybrid epic capturing the chaos of war and the savagery of outlaw life, merging both into a tale of treachery, courage, and doomed ambition. These 15 brutal classics, now free on Tubi, remind us that war and the frontier share the same desperate heartbeat. Each film resurrects forgotten battles and untamed legends waiting to seize new audiences. Watch them while they last, for history always rides fast and some stories vanish before we realize their worth.